This week on the Baseline Podcast, we discuss how the Braves won the World Series and how it shocked me, and how the Reds maybe next year can make the playoffs and make a difference in the NL Central. And then we talk about the NBA, we talk about the NCAA basketball, we look at them, we preview them, and we discuss my predictions for what Ohio State and what the Cavs can do this year on the basketball court. And then we finally discuss college football and the NFL, and we discuss all the new moves, the college football rankings. We cover so much here on the Baseline Podcast. So stay tuned and catch it all up next. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. Wow, it's been a while. If you're new, my name is Ben, and for some of you, if you need a reintroduction, my name is Ben. Maybe, I don't know. But I've been away. Rebecca and I have been, we were gone in America for about a week and a half. I haven't really made an episode in probably 2.5 weeks. So I'm back, and it's going to be a lot. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of different sports. I'm going to try to focus on a few here and there, do my best. Obviously, my goal is to cover as much as I can. My goal is to be able to cover the best I can, but also be able to explain my thoughts and opinions well. And so today is just going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of different things. We're going to recap baseball, and there's NHL, there's NBA, college basketball, college football, NFL, and a couple other things too. So a lot of things, but I will say it was nice being back in America. I was able to watch football games at a normal time, but it's good to be back home. And Rebecca and I really enjoyed our time, but we're ready to get back at this. And before I even start, just so you know, if you're listening to this or watching this, I'll be coming out with a couple videos on my YouTube channel about Rebecca was trying different types of sweets in America. There will also be a vlog coming out on there from our time in America, as well as there will be the Real Talk with Ben podcast will be on its way back. And Rebecca, as long as she's a little under the weather, but as long as she's feeling good, we will be recording that, and that will be out in the near future. So super excited. We'll see what happens. But yeah, let's get into this. Let's talk a little bit of baseball. It's been a crazy end of the year. If you remember my predictions back at the end of September, I definitely did not have the Braves winning at all. I just didn't see that happening. But it was a great World Series. I was able to catch parts of it. And honestly, as long as the Astros lose, that's all that matters to me. So the Braves win the World Series. Really cool. It's cool to see like Freddie Freeman winning for a club he's been with for a very long time. It's always cool, those kind of stories. Those like the Jorge Soler's, who's kind of been an unknown guy and having a huge year, but then also a huge World Series, winning the MVP. That's just really, really cool. But as obviously the MLB season comes to an end, we can kind of recap, look back at it. I'm going to come from a Reds point of view, just because that's my team and that's who I root for. But the Reds really in general, yes, it's disappointing that you don't make the playoffs, but they did have a really good year. Besides that, they had a lot of injuries, battled a lot of injuries, but a lot of good young guys. You look at Jonathan India, who I believe will win Rookie of the Year, and I believe could have a heck of a second year. And you look at a lot of these young guys, you look at Votto's resurgence, Jesse Winker, if he stays healthy, who knows what happens at the end of the year. If their pitching staff stays healthy, excuse me. And so I look at that and you say, it was a really good year. If you look at baseball in general, it was a really good hitting year. Obviously, there was good pitchers, but it was a really good hitting year. But the kind of question I want to pose is, what's next for the Reds? What's next? Are they able to kind of replace some of the guys I'll talk about here in a second? Or is it going to be one of those where we take a step back, which is not what Reds fans want to see? And in general, no team wants to see their team take a step back. One of the biggest things that actually came to news today and yesterday, I'm recording this on Friday. So technically, if you're listening to this on Saturday, it's like, anyways, Thursday and Friday of this week, we heard that Castellanos would be opting out, which is a super bummer, honestly. I kind of knew it was going to happen. I mean, the guy had a career year. He was only going to get paid $32 million over 2 years. Do I hate to see him go? Of course. He was the one consistent bat that we had. But then the most bummed I was not like Wade Miley, actually, by the way, just was announced as I'm recording this, that he has been caught off waivers. He's been signed off waivers, claimed, there we go, by the Chicago Cubs. So we'll be seeing him 3 times a year, or 3 times a year, a lot of times a year, a lot of series a year. Anyways, he was one that I was kind of bummed about just because I really connected with him, just the way he played, and also just, him having a no-hitter this year. But I understand that the Reds are tight on cash, I guess, which part of that's Votto's contract and a couple other contracts. But no, Tucker Barnhart's the one that I'm most bummed about. He's a guy that, came through the Red system. We've all known him. Never a great hitter, but an amazing leader, an amazing catcher. And it's tough to see him go to Detroit. But, you wish him the best. And obviously, you have, Stevenson right behind him, who I think is going to be an all-star at one point. With Castellanos, who is it? Is it Friedel? Is it Naquin? Is it, Aquino? I don't know who kind of plays that Castellanos role next year. And who's going to cover for Wade Miley? There's a lot of young guys, Hunter Green, some of these guys. So this is my thought. This is my prediction for next year for the Reds. I believe that the Cincinnati Reds they'll have a regress year. I'm not saying a lot. I just don't see the Reds winning 80 games. I see them maybe going, 77 and like 85 or whatever, 77 and 86. I just don't see where they're going to get the bats from. I mean, I want to say Votto's going to do this again, but I don't think he will. And I think you're just going to have a lot of inconsistency. And I hate to say that, but I'm a realist when it comes to realizing that the Reds are very inconsistent until they get that winning culture back where they're in the playoffs all the time. I think it's gonna be really hard to keep that momentum. But that is my kind of season recap, mainly of the Reds. That's who I root for, so that's who I'm going to talk about. But overall, it was a great baseball season, and it's great to see baseball back after the COVID shortened season. Really cool to see baseball back, and I can't wait to watch next year and see what the Reds do and many other teams. Now we're going to be moving from the baseball diamond to the ice. Yes, we're going to be talking about hockey, which is something that I never talk about here. But I thought, why not? I wouldn't call myself a true Blue Jackets fan. Like I root for them because they're in my state, but I don't really watch hockey that much. I keep track of the Blue Jackets just because I really enjoy that. Hopefully, maybe I can have my brother on here in the future. He's a huge hockey fan, huge Columbus Blue Jackets fan. I do know they just had Patrick Lane hurt, which I think is going to hurt them a lot. And again, I don't have a ton to say about the NHL. I'm going to be totally honest. I don't know really enough to talk about it. That's why hopefully in the near future, I will have my brother on who can, and also, or my friend Jordan or Evan, because they can explain it 4 times better than I can. So we're not going to spend much time with the NHL. I just wanted to briefly say that, I hope the Blue Jackets make the playoffs. They're 6-3 right now. Hope they do well. I always am, even though I don't really understand as much about hockey. I try to do my best to understand the game to the best of my abilities to then make, an opinion-based argument. Anyways, that's all for NHL. I'm sorry for NHL fans out there. I will try to be better next time, but that's all I really could think of right now. Anyways, we're going to go to the NBA because, yes, the NBA has tipped off. It's been a kind of a cool beginning of the year. We've seen the Lakers struggle a little bit. We've seen the Bulls just come out of nowhere. And my Cavs. Yeah, I'm going to talk about my Cavs a little bit. Dude, 5-4. I'll take it. As of this point, we're 5-4. Honestly, didn't think that was going to happen. I never got to do my preseason preview or my predictions. I kind of said that I think the Cavs would be one of those under 500 teams that might squeak into the playoffs if they get that, couple good games. But the way they're playing right now, and honestly, without Kevin Love, I have said this for a few years now, Kevin Love needs to go. I'm sorry to Cavs fans that love Kevin Love. I loved him too. And Kevin Love is one of those guys that I think he's a great leader. And I think it's a guy that we can have on the backside of the bench, but as a leader, but it's not worth paying him that much money. I think at some point they'll buy him out or they'll find a trade somehow. But overall, I think the Cavs are playing really well. I look at Mobley, who's having a great rookie year, started the rookie year. Garland's starting to pass the ball now. I'm interested to see what happens, after this first month. The Cavs seem to be a team that always does well in the first month or like the second month, and then they just start struggling. Can they keep this consistency? Can they play some good defense? They have the height, they have the length. I'm doing a 2K playthrough on my stream at the Baseline Gaming on Twitch. And one thing I was realizing was just how long this team is. And in real life, they're super long. They're super athletic. And I think this team can be a tough team to handle. And I don't think they're going to win the East by any means, but it's good to see the Cavs doing something without LeBron. And I'm a LeBron fan just about as much as anybody else. Like, I love seeing him play for the Cavs, but I also realize that there needs to be, a new generation. And so I really hope it's the best for them. My predictions for the whole NBA year is I really think you're going to see in the finals, I think it's the Bucks or the Nets out of the East. After watching a few games, those are the two teams. Maybe not right now, you could see it, but I think, later on the Bulls will be there too, I think. But I think on the West, you're going to either have the Lakers or the Warriors. And I couldn't believe I said the Warriors because I thought they were going to struggle big time. One of my students is a big Warriors fan at school. He was so pumped. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see. But I just think you can't count out LeBron and that team. Carmelo's having a heck of a year for the Lakers. But the NBA is going to be a good year. And hopefully we'll get to see some good basketball. Like I said, I'm not a huge NBA fan, but I do enjoy, watching and just the game of basketball itself. I just enjoy watching. So my predictions, you'll see probably, okay, I'm going to say it now because I keep jumping around. I'm going to say Lakers versus Nets. And I think you're going to have the Nets win it all. Yes, I said it here. I think the Nets are going to win it all. I think the Lakers get close, but I just think the age will become a factor, I think. But yeah, so Lakers win it all. I never thought I would say that, but not Lakers. Nets win it all. I want to clarify, the Nets win it all. Anyways, so Nets win it all. That's kind of my NBA preview. Hopefully I'll do some more like kind of game by game once more games happen. And I kind of get a grip of how I want to do it. Again, a lot of this stuff I'm kind of playing around with. Don't really know how I'm going to talk about it. And hopefully we'll have some guests on. My hope is to have some guests on this where I will have interviewed them and then you'll be able to hear it on the podcast itself, which I think would be a really cool, just a really cool opportunity. So yeah, that is the NBA preview. We're going to move into this. We're going to stay on the hard court here. We're going to go to the college game. And again, it still hasn't started yet. So there's little unknowns. But as a Ohio State fan, I think Ohio State basketball is going to be pretty good. I think up front, they will. I think if you look behind, kind of behind the front three. So really behind the 3, 4, and 5, I think there's a lot of unknown of who's going to be that leader as a guard. But I think, Seth Towns not playing is going to hurt them a little bit, but you have so many guys back. You have Young, I think he's going to miss some time too. But they're going to have some injuries at the beginning of the year, but I think as the year goes on, I think Ohio State's going to be really play really well. My money's still on Baylor to do really well and maybe win it all again. We actually have a former Cedarville basketball player that's actually a grad assistant down there. So kind of pulling for Baylor if Ohio State doesn't make it. But I think it's going to be an interesting year in the sense that, fans are allowed back in. We know how that changes the atmosphere, right? Like last year was a little weird. So I'm interested to see how this year changes and how this year kind of becomes this fun atmosphere again. The game of basketball is fun when there's fans and when there's some good teams. And I think there's a lot of good teams. I think Purdue is going to be a heck of a team this year. You can never count out Duke. This is Coach K's last year. I don't count out Duke. They actually play Ohio State, which I think is going to be an amazing game. I wish I was there for. But you can't count out Duke. You can't count out Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is the favorites, I think, right now to a lot of people. Why blame them? But they just seem to never pull through. So we'll have to see on that. But a lot of really good teams, a lot of great games are going to be coming up. I can't wait to watch some. Be able to watch them over here very late at night, like always. But it'll be a joy to watch. So we're going to go from the basketball court. We're going to go on over to the gridiron. We're going to be talking about football. Obviously, one of the biggest things I talk about because we're in the middle of football season. And I've missed a few weeks. I've missed a couple games. I miss a lot of action that's happened in college football and the NBA. And so we're going to get started with that here shortly. But I do want to say that I just want to thank you guys all for your support, everything you've been doing, just encouraging me and stuff. It really means a lot. So before I get into football, I just want to say that because sometimes I say it at the end and maybe it's not everyone hears it, but I just do want to say thank you for that. So we're going to get right into the gridiron. We're going to talk about college football. Then we're going to finish up with the NFL, and that'll be the episode. So let's get into it right now. So we're going to be talking about some NCAA/NFL. Yes, we're talking about the NCAA. I don't know why I said that way. I cut, so it was like a weird transition for me. But anyways, college football and then the NFL. We're going to look at the last couple of games, especially for the Ohio State. For the Ohio State. Wow, that sounded weird. For Ohio State Buckeyes, they had actually, I just saw something, by the way. They just suspended Jack Miller, which I didn't see that coming. That just was announced as I'm looking at this over here. Yeah, so they won 54-7 against, I didn't go over the Maryland. Did I go over the Maryland game? I can't remember. But Indiana lost 54-7 to Ohio State. Stroud had 266. Henderson ran for 81. And then Ohio State had a slugfest. I was at home in America for that game. I was actually for both games. And watching that Penn State game was a crazy game. Thought a few times Ohio State might blow the game, but the defense played really well. Stroud had 305. Henderson had 152 yards. Just a great couple games. And obviously this week they have Nebraska, which we'll talk about in a second. The thing I'll talk about the last few games for Ohio State, right? One, their offense is very good, and their defense is a lot better than people think. There's a lot of discussion early on in the year how the Ohio State defense is really bad, and I was one of those people. I said the defense was really bad. But after watching these last few games, looking at the stats, this has become a very good defense. A lot of sacks. They're doing a great job. Now, the thing is, they're not flashy, right? They're not the Georgias. They're not the Alabamas. They just get the job done. If that means giving up some yards, they'll give it up. But they're not really letting teams score right now, which is a key, or holding teams to field goals. That's the key. And these are the kind of things I've noticed the last few games, that one, Stroud is a legit Heisman contender. I don't care what anybody says. They talk about Caleb Williams from Oklahoma, and yeah, he's a great player. He's played 3 games. Stroud he struggled the first 2 games, and then he has looked nothing other than impressive. And I think you have really 2 guys that are Heisman contenders, and Henderson as well. But Stroud's one of those guys, I played the position of quarterback, and I always tell people that the hardest part about being a quarterback is that you have to make split-second decisions and know where you're going to throw the ball and know when it's a read option, when you got to pull it. So many people get on Stroud, they thought McCord might end up being the guy, and I'm like, no. Stroud is basically a true freshman. He's a redshirt freshman, but he's barely played. He is honestly trying to really put himself there. I mean, everyone talks about Ewers and McCord, and I'm like, yeah, but we have a stud in Stroud. Now, do I think he should be running the ball more? Of course. I think a lot of people will agree with me on that. But why not when you have Henderson next to you, just throw the ball. He's looking like a Heisman contender, and also TreVeyon Henderson is just good. Like, that's all I'm going to say. He's a heck of a player. Again, another Heisman candidate that I think will do something. I think maybe not this year, obviously, win it, but I think there's a good chance he could win it, in his probably 3 years. He's not saying 4. But the one thing I love about Henderson is that he's only played a couple halves, but last week especially, and I want to say this because TreVeyon is one of those guys that he struggled early on against Penn State. It was the first true defense since Oregon that he's faced. And he carried the ball a lot the first time he's also done that. And he struggled. It was like the first 20 carries for like 52 yards or something like that. And then he ripped off that huge 60 plus yard run. And that kind of got him started. I have said this since I saw Henderson play the first time. He's a guy that when you get him the ball, he's going to fight for yards. He's going to do this. I'll talk about the Browns in the NFL, but the one thing they're getting away from is the run. And that's the one thing I hope Ohio State doesn't get away from. Because when they run the ball, that opens up so much for the passing game. Olave's been struggling a little bit here and there. He only gets 1 or 2 catches a game. Part of that's because of the defense. But Stroud has to realize and really Ryan Day has to realize, you got to run the ball. And when you're in the red zone, run the ball. Stop throwing it, run the ball. make it to where it's the running game and then you base your passing game off of that. And I think a struggle against that Penn State team was an okay thing. I'll talk about the football rankings here shortly. Struggling against a Penn State team, which is a good team. I don't want people to look at their 5-3 record. They're a good team that I think just has hit a rut. Like their defense is a top defense in the college football. Their offense is struggles, but the Ohio State defense showed that when they're up to the challenge and they really want to try, they're going to do their best. You have Denzel Burke, who I think is going to be probably one of the best, if not the best cornerback in his draft class when he comes to that time. He is a very elite athlete as a freshman, unknown guy, right? Again, it was a great win, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, what it means, but it was a good win. The rest of football, I think Michigan State looks legit. People disagree with me. They look really good. I mean, when you have a guy that's literally averaging 160 yards a game, why would you throw the ball? They're like, they can't throw the ball. I'm like, why would you? I mean, the guy has literally got over 1,000 yards already. He's going to be close probably to 2,000. I wouldn't be shocked. Walker the third is just, he's unreal. Like, I just love watching him run. He reminds me a lot of like he's kind of like a bowling ball in a sense, kind of like a Nick Chubb in a sense. But it's just fun to watch. I love watching him. But we're going to beat him in 2 weeks, so no worries. And then Michigan or meat chicken is still meat chicken. Michigan's once again proven that they get to the big game and they choke. And it's just, I hate to say it, like I'm a Ohio State fan. Obviously, there's a little bias. I don't really like Michigan, but just from a coaching standpoint, like they can't beat Michigan State. They can't beat Ohio State. That's what you're hired at Michigan to do. And until Jim Harbaugh figures that out, and let's be honest, how much more time do you give him? What if he loses to Ohio State, at the end of the year? I mean, yeah, they'll get to a bowl game, but is it worth it? So I'm interested to see how that plays out, and especially that Ohio State Michigan game is going to be a heck of a game this year. I think it's at the Big House. So it's going to be an intense crowd. Still think Ohio State's going to pull out the win. We'll talk about that too. And then Georgia's just the best team in the nation. Now their offense struggles, but their defense is just unreal. I'm sorry. It's so good. Watching that defense it's so fun to watch. And, they have a dude that's like 6'6", 325. Like he's a massive man and he runs like ridiculous speed. So yeah, that's kind of like my thoughts the last few weeks on football. The other thoughts I have is on the college football rankings. Now, I'm going to preface this with this. I don't believe that Alabama should be at 2. I also don't believe Cincinnati should be at 6. Oregon, I can kind of see where they're at. The reason why I don't think Alabama should be at 2 is because someone said on ESPN, very interesting, you shouldn't be giving them basically they're giving them credit for losing to a worse opponent, right? Like Ohio State technically had a better loss than Alabama. Cincinnati hasn't lost. Oklahoma hasn't lost. Like there's a lot. So I don't know if it's the whole Alabama bias or whatever, but I don't think Alabama's the second best team in the country. I think they're like 4, 5. I think Ohio State could beat them this year. But yeah, I think to be honest, my college rankings was Georgia at 1. I said, what was it? Who was it? Oh no, Georgia at 1, Cincinnati at 2. I think they're really a really good team. Cincinnati at 2. Michigan State at 3, Ohio State 4, Oregon 5, Alabama 6. Now, why do I have Oregon and Ohio State flipped? The reason is because I think it's the head-to-head. I know that's why they're ahead of them. But if you look at the eye test, the better team right now is Ohio State. But again, I think Ohio State, I'll talk about it here in a bit. I'll just say it now, they have to win out, right? Ohio State wins out, they're going to get in. Oregon, if they win out, I still think they'll get in. Alabama with 2 losses does not get in. I do not care who anybody else says. They're not going to put a 2-loss team, even if it's Alabama. I think the final rankings will have probably a Big Ten team for sure, a SEC team, probably will be a Pac-12 and maybe Oklahoma. Who knows? But I am really happy where Ohio State's put. I was worried they're going to be at 6 or 7 or maybe even 8. But the fact that they think Ohio State has that much quality puts them in a great position to have a really, really good run down the stretch here where you're playing a top 5 team and then a top 10 team. Sorry about that. I was just talking about the top 2 teams that Ohio State will face. Sorry, I was my memory card was full because I don't empty stuff. But that's besides the point. If you're listening to this, it has nothing to do with that. But yeah, so like I said, I think if Ohio State wins out, they'll make it. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think they will. But yeah, let's move on to Ohio State versus Nebraska. That is the game this week, the game that I think is going to be. My score seems to be a blowout, but there's part of me that thinks it could be pretty close. Part of me that thinks it's going to be a game that could be decided by, a few plays here and there. Because I think, yes, Nebraska's 3-6, but I think they're a better 3-6 team than what their record shows. But yeah, so I think that there's three keys to this victory. I think one is just running the ball. I think Ohio State getting back to a balanced offense and not being so pass heavy, I think can really help them as they go farther into the year. I think it would be a really big key, and I think something that could work for them. The second thing is I think the defense needs to play like the defense that we've been seeing. It needs to be the defense that has been showing up, dominating, and really just causing havoc to teams left and right and playing some good ball. And the third thing is this. I think in order for Ohio State to do well, it's not even just for this game, but to do well in the future is I think they need to find that a couple more of those X factors, right? You have Olave, you have Wilson, Nick Jigba, and the X factor might even be just the offensive line. The offensive line at times last week looked really suspect, which scares me a little bit just because, I mean, what's going to happen? We don't know what's going to happen. And, are they the same offensive line we saw early in the year, or are they regressing? So I'm interested to see that. I think they'll be fine, but we'll see. But my prediction for the game will be Ohio State 45, Nebraska 14. I think early on it might be like one of those 14-7, 21-7 games. And then I think, Ohio State will just open the floodgates and I think take care of Nebraska pretty handily. I don't think it's going to be a tough test at all. I think Nebraska is a better team than they look. Martinez has been there, it seems like forever, but he's a heck of a quarterback. They're leading rusher and passer. So we'll see about that. That's pretty much it on that. But my game of the week for college football is actually going to be down the SEC. I think it's Auburn versus Texas A&M. And honestly, as a Ohio State fan, I want Auburn to win because that helps the Ohio State in the sense that makes Alabama's loss even look worse and could help them in a future debate. So I think Auburn will win 34-24. I think it will be a fun game to watch. So I might tune into that and see a few of those, few minutes of that game for sure. So that is pretty much what's going on. There's a lot of other good games. Check them out. I hope that you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, let me know what you think about the college football rankings. I'd love to hear what you think. Maybe you think Cincinnati should be in the top 3, or maybe you think they should be below 10. Whatever it is, I want to hear it. Because that allows us to have discussion. And hopefully we'll have some people on the future to discuss it as well. And then we're going to go from the college football gridiron to the pro gridiron, or the NFL. And we're going to be talking about, what I've seen so far, and the Browns and the way they've just decided to decline. But the big news out of the NFL, and if you are a Browns fan, you could be happy or sad. I am very happy. OBJ is gone. Thank you, Andrew Berry. I have said this for a while now. Odell Beckham needed to be gone, I think, after last year. I think you saw you can win and play very, very good without OBJ. OBJ is a great talent, don't get me wrong. But his attitude at times, it stinks. His attitude at times stinks. He's not the same player he once was. You heard on ESPN, there's a lot of teams that are doubting, do they sign him? He's still the OBJ of old. I think also when your father gets in the mix, and I heard someone had a great argument, you're professionals, right? Like, as a teacher, I wouldn't have my dad call in and say, hey, this, you're doing terrible, whatever. Like, that was, I think, where that was the last moment for the Browns, saying this is now becoming a cancer inside the locker room. Now, a lot of people will disagree with me that he's a cancer inside the locker room. When you don't show up to practice, when you just are talking about things in the off season, it makes you wonder, is your heart really there? And I think Baker Mayfield handled it the best, where he didn't really say anything about it. which I think is a good thing. He just went with the flow and said, this is the way it's going to be. And I think it's a good move for everyone. I think another big move that happened in the NFL is that Adrian Peterson's back with the Titans. Henry, who's arguably the best running back in some people's opinions, he's gone, injured. So they brought Adrian Peterson, who's like 36. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's going to be kind of fun to watch, actually. Was a big AP fan in his early days. But yeah, so that is kind of the news per se. I mean, you see some of the teams, like the Packers, who don't have Aaron Rodgers because of COVID, but they've been playing really well. The Cardinals, the Rams, let's see who else. Titans have been playing well. The Bengals, I can't believe I said that. And then the Ravens and quite a few other teams. But I think we saw the real Bengals. They lost to the Jets last week, which made me so happy. But besides the point, we have the Browns versus Bengals this week. The Browns last week obviously lost to the Steelers, which that game showed me they need to figure out things really fast. And I think this was a good step by getting rid of OBJ. But I think there's a lot more. You got to get back to the run game. You have to figure out this defense. This defense has been atrocious the last 3 games. I don't know what's happened. But you need to get back to the Browns team of last year, of running the ball, picking your pockets, choosing your shots and going from there. So I think it's going to be a heck of a game. Browns versus Bengals is always fun for me anyways. My brother's a Bengals fan, so suck it, Jared. Anyways, Browns versus Bengals, I think the keys to victory, I think, is top 3 things are defense needs to play like the defense from the first 2 weeks. The run game needs to be more than half of what they do. And Baker needs to calm down. I think if you have those 3 things, this could be a win very easily, even though I don't think it will be. It's at Cincinnati, but it's a must win. If you lose this game, your shots to go to the playoffs are very slim at this point. You win this game, it puts you in a very good position. You're going to be tied for at least 3rd, maybe 2nd in the AFC North. And you just got to pull for some losses from other teams. But right now, Browns versus Bengals, I think the prediction is Browns will win 24-21. I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't know if we'll be able to stop Chase or Burrow, but maybe we can get a few stops here and there and pull out a win. So that's a must win for me. And I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I think they are going to get back to running the ball. And I think you're going to see Nick Chubb, if he's back and healthy, being the Nick Chubb of old. And then my game of the week this week is, I believe, Monday night game is it's Sunday night. Rams versus Titans. Man, it's going to be a good game. Cooper Kupp, who's been probably the best receiver all year. He's playing for the Rams. Obviously the Titans with Adrian Peterson now. It's going to be a heck of a game. I think the Rams are going to win. I think without Henry, the Titans are very now not an offensive strength. They're more of a defensive strength now. So I think the final will be 28-14. I think the Rams adding Von Miller. Their defense is very good. Their offense is very good with Matthew Stafford. And I think you're going to see Rams versus Titans. It's going to be 28-14. Don't really think it's going to be close after a while. So that's my thoughts on the Browns, on the High State Buckeyes, on NCAA basketball, NBA, NHL, MLB. We're covering it all. We try to cover all the angles here on the Baseline podcast. And I hope I did that today. Like I said, in the near future, we will be hopefully having some guests on, both from here in Hungary and as well as back in the States. We'll see how that can work. It's kind of hard, 6-hour difference, but it's 5 hours right now. Anyways, hope you've enjoyed this. If you have really enjoyed this podcast, if you're listening on Spotify or any of the podcast listening apps, then make sure you favorite it, make sure you like it, put it on there so that way you can see it every time I come out with a new episode. It's usually weekly. It's been a little weird lately. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That'll allow me to see that you are enjoying this podcast, but also you would want to see more videos. Like I said, there'll be new videos coming out here shortly that I'm really excited to share with you. Kind of cool to see from Rebecca's experience in America. So, and also on top of that, I am hopefully going to redecorate this and there'll be some new maybe shots, angles. We'll see. So there's a lot going on. So you want to stay tuned on YouTube and check all that out. So once again, my name is Ben. I hope I've covered all the angles here on the Baseline podcast, and I hope you have an amazing day.